Today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at washingtech.com/book. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player.
Moving the needle. Welcome to the Washingtech Policy Podcast.
Curating communications, media, and tech policy news so you don't have to. News, interviews, everything you need without the axe to grind. It's the Washingtech Policy Podcast with Joe Miller.
Both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton underwhelmed Silicon Valley donors. Hackers have turned to your healthcare records now. And Rachel Rodgers is my guest. Julia Love at Reuters reports that neither Donald Trump nor Hillary Clinton are pulling in Silicon Valley funding anywhere near what Mitt Romney and Barack Obama did in 2012. Trump has pulled in less than 6% of what Romney did, and while Clinton has significantly outraised Trump in the Valley, she's raised less than half of what Obama did there. The full story is at Reuters.com. Kurt Woodward at the Boston Globe reports that as financial firms and retail outlets have significantly tightened their fraud prevention tactics, criminals have now turned to hacking healthcare records. The healthcare records of 4.5 million people have been compromised this year, and while this is down from last year, the long-term consequences are much more severe than those of financial data breaches. Security software maker Check Point has uncovered a huge security flaw in Android phones known as QuadRooter. The breach affects as many as 1 billion phones, including high-end phones like the Samsung Galaxy 7 and HT10. Ina Fried at Recode has more. 3 House Democrats are calling for GOP leaders to investigate Donald Trump for encouraging Russia to hack into the 30,000 emails still missing from the private email server Hillary Clinton used when she served as Secretary of State. Congressman Patrick Murphy from Florida, Andre Carson from Indiana, and Eric Swalwell from California are asking a House panel to investigate. Check out Haroon Demirjan's full coverage in the Washington Post. Privacy advocates are getting worried about customers exchanging their privacy for lower-priced internet services. David Lazarus at the LA Times points to Comcast and AT&T, who offer customers lower prices in exchange for tracking their online behavior. Advocates are worried the model is creating a society of privacy haves and have-nots, in which privacy will only be available to people willing to pay for it. The Federal 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver ruled last week that entities that mimic government agencies must observe the Fourth Amendment warrant requirement for searches and seizures. The case involves a defendant who sent child pornography via his AOL account, which AOL then flagged and sent to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or NCMEC, which it was required to do. A Department of Homeland Security special agent then obtained a tip through NCMEC's system and then a search warrant to search the suspect's home. The court found that NCMEC should never have opened the email without a warrant in the first place, since it was acting on the government's behalf. Cyrus Farivar has more coverage in Ars Technica. A federal judge on the D.C. Court of Appeals issued a largely sealed ruling last week criticizing the FBI's new gag order rules. Gag orders demand secrecy from companies regarding data requests the FBI makes to investigate national security cases. The new gag order rules require the FBI to review either on the close of an investigation or on the 3-year anniversary of an investigation whether a gag order is still necessary. So this means the FBI could, theoretically at least, at the close of every single investigation, deem the gag orders to still be necessary and keep them in place indefinitely. But these are just criticisms. The judge did not order a revamping of the rules. Ellen Nakashima at the Washington Post has the story. Finally, Greenberg Traurig, the international law firm, will be lobbying on behalf of the Pokemon Company International, which has come under scrutiny after the release of its wildly popular Pokemon Go game. The game has caused concern among lawmakers regarding distracted driving and the potential for pedophiles to exploit the game to harm children. For example, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo banned sex offenders on parole from using Pokemon Go for fear they would put down lures to entice children to come to a particular location. location. Greenberg-Traurig will work to counter that negative perception among federal lawmakers. Megan Wilson at The Hill has more. Stay with us. For Washington Tech Policy Podcast listeners, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with a free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. You can listen at the gym, in the car, or on your morning run. How about The Big Leap? Conquer your hidden fear and take life to the next level by Gay Hendricks.
I imagine that you sense a huge unrealized potential in yourself, an extraordinary level of success you know you can achieve. I also imagine that you worry about falling short of achieving the ultimate success you can see, taste, and smell.
You can download The Big Leap free by trying audible.com. Sign up for your free audiobook and 30-day trial today at washingtech.com/book. My guest today is Rachel Rodgers. Very exciting. Rachel is a business lawyer turned business coach, intellectual property strategist, and the creator of Small Business Bodyguard. In 2013, she created the Small Business Bodyguard. Cover your bases, cover your assets, cover your ass. This game-changing legal resource has been called fun and engaging by New York Times bestselling author Chris Brogan, and a graduate-level course on how to build a strong foundation for your business by CEO of OurDeal, Kyle Durand. Rachel is known in the legal industry and beyond for being an innovator and master of productizing services and creating high-quality, high-profit products. SBB and the other legal kits she has created have been transformative, generating $500,000 in revenue in just 2 years and serving 1,700 small businesses around the country. And she achieved those results with almost no active marketing because she simply didn't have the time. She literally launched SBB with a newborn in her arms. Please welcome Rachel Rodgers. Rachel, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Tell us a little bit about the Rodgers Collective.
Yes. Well, Rodgers Collective started out as a law firm. And when I was clerking for a judge my, first year out of law school, I kind of mapped out starting my own practice. And the thing that was unique about it was that it's a virtual law office. So I don't have a physical office in a particular location. The way I work with my clients is using the internet and using tools that are out there. What we use, is actually my case to be able to deliver services in a secure environment to our clients. So that's what was unique about it. And so that's what we've been doing for the past 6 years. And we're actually in transition right now. One of the things that happened in about year 3 of running Rodgers Collective is I realized that there was a whole segment of the market that couldn't afford legal fees or didn't want to pay them. But, they were starting businesses and they needed legal help. And so I decided to create a DIY, do-it-yourself product to teach people basically what I know about how to start up a business and take care of all of the legal pieces of creating a business. And so that product is called Small Business Bodyguard and completely just changed everything. I was shocked by how well it did, how much revenue it brought in. It brought in almost as much revenue as the law firm every year since inception. And so that's sort of changed our focus a little bit.
Your site is awesome. I mean, I signed up for your newsletter myself. I bowed down before you.
Cool.
It's just an awesome site. But I want to get your thoughts here on some things. So now, what are some of the key challenges you see from entrepreneurs, your clients, particularly women, that they tell you they're facing as they start their own businesses or try to grow their businesses?
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard to juggle so much, right? And that's part of the struggle is you really need it. It's almost like it takes a village, right, to raise up a business. And so I think that's part of their challenge is how do I take care of all of these different pieces of building a business, all these different hats I have to wear as the deliverer of the service or product, and then also the marketer and also the accountant and the janitor and the lawyer, And so one of the things that I wanted to do was take care of that lawyer piece. So what I find is when I work with my clients, in the first year of business, I will take care of their business formation, figuring out what format they should be in, contracts that they have with any body that their business has a relationship with, whether it's a client or a contractor or a partner or an affiliate, whoever they're doing business with, having contracts with all of them. Then taking care of their intellectual property, which is something that a lot of people miss, which is extremely important because that's where all the value is in the business for almost every business. And so taking care of their intellectual property, protecting their trademarks, registering their copyrights, and things like that. And then it's, being able to do business online without getting in trouble and teaching them how to do that, what things they need to have in place, like privacy policy, terms and conditions. And then lastly, dealing with the legal aspects of building their team, taking on employees, taking on contractors, and what that should look like. So that's sort of like what I used to cover with my clients in the first year of working with them as their lawyer. And so that's also what I included in Small Business Bodyguard. So those are the kinds of things that I think that everybody struggles with, like how do I add someone to payroll? It's so confusing, and I don't have time to learn this. That was really the struggle. It's like I don't have time to Google for several days to figure this out.
Right.
So that's some of the pieces that I found that people really struggle with. Oh, and one other thing is definitely the stealing of intellectual property. A lot of my clients come to me from having dealt with that, where they've created content for their blog, or they're putting content out there to get new clients in, or they may have created a product. I have a client who created an amazing product, and she was selling it for, maybe like $1,000, every time someone purchased the product, and she had lots of customers, business doing well. And then someone took the entire product, put it on like one of these education platforms, and was selling it and making money from her exact product. They just stole the whole thing and put their name on it. So dealing with issues like that, where, people are taking their intellectual property that they're creating, that's brought in a lot of my clients.
So how did that end? Did the person get arrested? No. They don't usually get arrested, but what we do is basically deal with it. It's a dispute, between two parties where one is saying, hey, you've stolen my intellectual property, and often the other one is saying, well, no, actually, I created it myself. And usually the truth comes out after a little bit of interaction. And often how these end is in settlement, where one party stops using it. Maybe the party who was using it pays fees to the other party who actually created it, or they may pass over any profits that they generated from the stolen content to the other party. So that's how we handle them. And a lot of times, like doing business, most of my clients are doing business online in one way or another. So, doing business online means it's really easy for other people to steal your intellectual property, but it's also a bit of a small world. So sometimes that can help things to move along to settlement because, people have an interest in not having their name dragged through the mud in the same circles, when they run all in the same circles and their clients are in those circles. So that helps. Why did I just ask you if they got arrested? Why would
Well, in some cases you can. I mean, I've heard cases of intellectual property infringement. Usually it's on a larger scale, and usually it's with larger companies where they will come in and take everything that you have. Like, for example, the example I remember is a T-shirt company that was like printing somebody else's brand on T-shirts, and they came in. The police came in and like took all of the, infringing goods out of the store. And I think they may have arrested someone. So I think there are cases in which it can be, a criminal offense.
Okay, so I'm not a total. All right. So now getting to the first steps of starting that business and deciding to go out on your own, what would you say are those critical first steps that people should take to shield themselves from lawsuits?
Well, my first thing is I always talk about the 4 layers of liability protection. So there are 4 layers of like protecting yourself. You want to have those 4 layers between you and a potential lawsuit, right? So the layers are corporate formation, because having a corporation means that your personal assets are shielded from, clients or employees who might want to sue you. And that's usually who's going to wind up suing you, sadly. It's usually your own clients or an employee or past employee who's disgruntled. That's usually who sues small businesses. And you could be sued by other people too. like a case of intellectual property infringement or something like that. But it's usually clients or employees. So having a corporate formation so that way your retirement accounts from your previous job, your home, any other personal assets you have are shielded and protected while you're out there taking risk, right? Creating a new business. So that's one thing, the corporate formation. The other thing is contracts. Contracts are where it's at. Like have a contract with everybody with whom you do business, because you can lay out specifically like how you're going to work together. And just the process of doing the contract forces you to really think through what this relationship is going to look like. Not only like, okay, here's what I'm giving you, here's what you're giving me in exchange, like I'm going to give you this service and you're going to pay me this amount of money. But it's like, all right, when do I owe you that money? In what form? What's the payment plan? What happens if it's late? What happens if I need to cancel halfway through? Who owns the intellectual property that's produced during this project at the end? These are important questions that you should answer, and it forces you to answer them if you have an agreement with your clients, or if you have an agreement with your contractors or anybody else who you're working with. So contracts are super important. The other thing that I love to put in contracts that I think is important is dispute resolution clauses. So putting in a mediation clause allows for both parties to sit with a mediator and try to resolve any conflicts that may come up, which, using a mediator at one of the, mediation organizations that I like and use is like $1,500, right? So it's like a $1,500 fee. You also have to pay a little bit more, I think, to the mediator. So it's going to cost you a couple $1,000. But litigation is going to cost you, a minimum of $25,000, $30,000 if it's state. If it's federal, forget it. It's going to cost you way more than that. So for a couple $1,000, you can resolve this dispute instead of going to court. So mediation clauses, I think, are super important for liability protection. So you have the corporate formation, you have contracts. Then the other thing you want to have is insurance. So if you deliver services, you should have professional liability insurance. It's not just for doctors and lawyers. So if you're a coach, if you're a consultant, if you're a nutritionist, if you're any kind of service professional, you could be in health and wellness, anything, you should have liability insurance for your services, right? Because that's what you're selling, and that's where people could potentially get injured, right? Like a health coach could give people, advice on how they should eat, and what if the person has a horrible reaction for some reason that's unknown to the health coach, and then they decide to blame you and sue you. Now your professional liability insurance kicks in, and they appoint a lawyer to handle that lawsuit, which means your business doesn't go bankrupt. So having liability insurance is huge. And often if you're like a non-licensed professional, so like if you're a coach or a consultant, it's like $500 a year for like $1 million in coverage. So it's just like no-brainer. Just do it, So that's the third one. And then lastly is just good customer service, like treat your customers well, deal with problems head on. I find this with a lot of women, but especially men too, that they try to avoid conflict, and if you're an entrepreneur, you need to be willing to have confrontations, so talk to your customers. If somebody's unsatisfied, don't wait for them to reach out to you. Don't try to avoid the situation. Go and deal with it directly and resolve the problem, because that's going to help you avoid lawsuits. It's way better to talk to the person directly, to try to resolve it, offer a refund, offer, to fix whatever mistakes you've made, because mistakes happen. None of us are perfect. I've made mistakes, and I always correct them, and I let the client know how it will be handled. But I've also been a customer of, a professional services company, for example, who was delivering a certain service, and they made a mistake. And then they tried to pretend that they didn't make the mistake, which only pissed me off more, right? So don't be that. Because you know why? Because people don't sue companies that they love. And if you provide great service and show up for your clients and deal with issues head on, then they're going to love you and they're not going to want to sue you. So those are the 4 layers of liability protection: having a corporation, having contracts in place, getting some liability insurance, and then also providing the best customer service that you can.
Wow. And Rachel, you've built the Rodgers Collective into a powerhouse, a profitable 6-figure a year, maybe 7. Is it 7 yet? Oh, we don't have that. And now you have. It's all right. It's okay.
I was just going to say we'll be seven figures this year.
All right. And you have a team. So what's your advice for people starting out who don't yet have a team in place and are struggling every day working in their business, handling those day-to-day tasks instead of on it and growing it and doing proposals and finding new clients? Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yes. Well, here's the method that I like to use, and I actually learned this from a guy named Todd Herman, who was like a leadership coach. He's worked with a lot of like sports teams and other organizations. But what he taught me is block and tackle, right? So like I like to block out time, like 2-hour blocks of time to get things done, right? So look at your to-do list for the day. Look at your top priorities, the things that are going to generate revenue, things that are going to keep your customers happy, like the top priorities, not all the little stupid piddly stuff that you'd like to get done, but we all know it's not getting done today because there's too many things on your list. So focusing on the items that are the top priority and then doing those things early as possible in the day and blocking the time to do it. So like block the time on your calendar, turn off Facebook, turn off Twitter, turn off any of the things that ping you, silence your phone, and just spend 2 uninterrupted hours knocking out whatever is the most top priority on your list. That's one of the ways that I work, and I think it's one of the best pieces of advice I've ever gotten. And then in between those 2-hour breaks, like I'll have a 2-hour block of time and then, take a break, and then maybe I'll see what's going on Facebook for a couple minutes. I'll go get a snack. I'll drink some water. And then I'll go do another 2-hour block of time. Or, if I have calls, I usually make my calls later in the day so that in the mornings I can spend that time when I know, like, that's when I'm in my zone on getting the things done on my list. So that's what I do. And the other thing that I do is wake up really early. So, I mean, I haven't done it recently because I just moved, so I'm kind of off of my normal schedule. But I usually will get up at 5 in the morning, sometimes 4:30. Yeah. And that's the quiet time I have because I have 2 toddlers. And like, if I get up at 6, they're going to hear me get up and then they're going to immediately jump out of their beds and be like, what are we doing? Like, feed me. Here's 7,000 requests I have for you. So your time to yourself is gone. So getting up super early is how I solve that problem. And I really love it because it's like this sacred, quiet time that I have to, my husband's sleeping, everyone's sleeping. And it's just like the time that I have to myself to do whatever the hell I want.
I feel like I'm moving towards 3 now. I feel like, it's been 4. And it's like, well, maybe I should try 3 because I have a 7 and 4-year-old myself. And, but,
yeah.
and then
4 a.m. is where I cross I feel like before 4 a.m. is like crossing the line. It's like, it's no longer like morning. It's like still night.
And now I'm doing the Spartan training too. So it's like,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm like getting up and then doing Spartan and then getting ready. And I'm still working full time too. So I'm like, I'm building this while I'm working. So I have to get downtown. So, those key hours in the morning are critical. Definitely.
No, they are.
But I'm just trying.
And it feels so amazing.
Right.
When it's like 9 a.m. and you got like 7 things off of your to-do list already. You're like, yo, I own this day. You know what I mean? Like, so you just feel awesome.
That's so true. So now let's turn to partnerships and building partnerships with other entrepreneurs and other partners and strategic alliances. What's the best way for someone to go about developing the relationships that lead to those types of partnerships? And how do you broach the topic with someone you've met? Do those relationships happen organically? Does someone formally, make the first move like dating? How does that work?
Yes. So this is interesting. I love this topic. One of the things that I do that I think is great for establishing relationships with people that you really want to be connected with is another tip that I learned from a friend of mine, Dan Martell, who's a serial entrepreneur in the tech space. Awesome, amazing guy. He's Canadian, and those Canadians are always so lovely. So, actually, Todd Herman's Canadian too. But anyway, so what he taught me was doing founders dinners. And that's one of the things that I love to do is like bring a group of people together for no specific agenda at all. Like just organizing a dinner. It could be a lunch. It could be like any meal, basically. Everybody's got to eat, right? So organizing a dinner or a lunch around, like one that I've done, actually most of the ones that I've done have been women entrepreneurs. So bringing people together. And I do this when I travel too. Like if I'm going to be in LA for a speaking gig, I'll maybe come a day early or use one of the evenings that I'm there to have a dinner with, women entrepreneurs who live in the area. So I've done it in New York, and it's something that I'm working on for in North Carolina, where I just moved. So that's one of the ways that you can get plugged in wherever you live. Like, it doesn't matter how tiny your town is. Like, there are other entrepreneurs there. It doesn't matter if they own a dry cleaners or what they do. If they're an entrepreneur, they understand what it feels like to be an entrepreneur, And it's true, too, for professionals as well. Like, you don't have to be an entrepreneur to use this. You can use this as a professional to meet more people and, for rainmaking purposes or just to expand your network. So I really like founders dinners. And the way it works is you just email people that you think would be cool. Sometimes you could have connections to them, maybe not. But just email them and say, hey, I'm getting a group of similar like-minded people together. Here's what you have in common with them, so name those things. In my cases, it was, other women entrepreneurs who live in LA. So here's your opportunity to meet them. Here's the date. Here's the restaurant. Let me know if you're available. And then you get, I think 6 people is great. 8 is doable, but that's as big as I would go. But I think 6 people is like the magic number. Because then you just really connect and bond. And every time I do them, all the women that are there are like, oh my God, thank you so much for bringing us together. Sometimes people will meet their best friend there, and so that's a way for you to really expand your network and serve other people and also serve yourself in terms of meeting new people. So that's my favorite tip to give for doing founders dinners. And if you want a book on it to kind of like think about the logistics, there's a great book by Jason Gaynard, who's also a friend of mine, called Mastermind Dinners, which you can get on Amazon. And it's a great book on exactly how he goes about creating these dinners. And his whole business is based on doing these dinners. Like, that's all the marketing he does. And he has an amazing conference that he sells out every year, months in advance. And it's because of his network that he's built by doing these dinners.
I think I've seen him before. I think he was on John Lee Dumas's podcast once. But who pays for that? Do you pick up the tab, or how does that work?
So it's your choice. So I've done them actually. Most of the ones
is it tacky though to say, okay, now you have to pay?
No, I don't think so. I mean, these are professionals. Like,
right.
Why can't you pay for your own dinner? But you just let them know ahead of time. So. Right. The ones I've done a couple where I picked up the tab just because I wanted to. Like, that's how I wanted to do it for those particular groups. But I've done other ones where it was like pay ahead, and it was like, here's the fee. The one I did one that was like called Cake and Coaching. So it was like, I
saw that. Yeah.
we'll sit around. Yeah, we sit around in a circle and chat and kind of like connect and talk about our biggest struggles. And other women in the group had solutions to our struggles, and so that's the whole point, is to just show yourself to be vulnerable, and you'll get the help and support you need. And then after that, like, we baked a cake, which was super fun. So it was just like a bonding exercise. So that was $195 per person. So and I charged everyone ahead of time. There are other ones, where you can just say, hey, it's going to be family style. It'll be $100 per person. Please bring cash. So you let them know all the details before they say yes, and that way they know what the deal is. Mm-hmm. So. And I think people who are entrepreneurs or professionals, like, they expect to pay for their own dinner. They'll actually be shocked if you cover the bill, because every time I cover the bill, like, people argue with me, about it. So that shouldn't be a barrier. Gotcha. People can pay for their own dinner, and you can pick a place that's not super expensive. Like, you can pick a more casual place if you want. But the key is you want a space where you can really have conversation. So check on Yelp to see noise level. Yelp will show noise level in the reviews for certain restaurants. So that's the key thing. You want it to be quiet enough that you can have really good conversation.
Rachel, it's been amazing having you on the show. So thanks once again for joining me. I just want to ask you a few more questions and then we'll close. Sound like a plan?
Sounds good to me.
All right. On this podcast, you've helped so much already. I'm just so much free stuff today. But we like to talk about policy and entrepreneurship, but also about what makes successful people like you tick. Tell us, Rachel, what are some habits, tactics, and apps that you use every day to stay on top of your game?
Oh, yeah. Well, I have a couple of apps. Some are really useful, and then one is just hilarious and fun. So I'll tell you about all of those. So one that I use with my team is Slack. I love it, and I have it on my phone as well. And so this is how my team and I work together, because my team is remote. So we're all over the country and world. Actually, one of my team members is in Germany. So it makes it really easy for us to connect throughout the day and just share information and work together. So I absolutely love Slack, huge fan for my team. And then what I use for email is Help Scout, which is a great app that is, you can use it on your desktop and also on your phone. But it's a great way, like if you have multiple emails coming in, like I have like info@RodgersCollective.com, Rachel@RodgersCollective.com, and all these other ones, So like there's all these places that people email us. And so what we do is we have Help Scout where that's sort of like the hub. So all of the emails go into Help Scout, and then we can sort of sort through what need responses quickly and, who's supposed to respond to that thing. So like we have someone who deals with deals with all of the emails that she can, and then whatever's left for me, I have a couple of emails left instead of me going through hundreds of emails. So I love Help Scout for sort of sorting through emails. It also connects with like all my other apps, so I can see things about my people, like I can see what they've purchased. I can see last time we emailed them, so it helps me to really deliver better customer service. So Help Scout is really amazing. If you get a ton of email in your business. And then the one that's really fun is Ebroji. Do you use this?
No.
It is so awesome. Okay, so it's an app created by Jesse Williams, who's an actor on Grey's Anatomy. He's also an activist. But anyway, it's a curated GIF keyboard, right? So like you can get all these GIFs that you can include in your text, and it's really, really hilarious. So if you want to punch up your text and make them more entertaining, I highly recommend the Ebroji app.
I'm going to check that out right now, actually.
It's really fun. It's like it's my favorite app. It serves no purpose other than to entertain me, and my friends.
And you mentioned the Mastermind book by Jason Gaynard, but do you have another book that you read that you're recommending to all your mentees, all your clients? Is there one book for you that you're recommending to everyone you meet?
Oh, yes. It's called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And I love this book. It's all about the upper limit problem, which we all have, right? Brené Brown talks about this too, about how our biggest struggles is not that we have a problem of like sadness or life being hard or whatever. Our biggest struggle is actually experiencing joy, because we have a limited capacity for joy. Like we're so used to a certain level of struggle that if things are going too well, we will find a way to create more struggle for ourselves. And that's what The Big Leap is all about, and how to combat that, and how to increase your capacity for joy, right? So like people always say like, oh, just waiting for the other shoe to drop. Why? What if the other shoe never drops? What if things just go perfectly well? What if there's no need for something to go bad just because something's going well for a while, So it's a really amazing book, and I think is life-changing. I read it every year. Like I reread it every year. So I have like a tagged up copy in my bookcase that I pull up all the time when I feel like I need to, remind myself of what's in there, and just, if I'm battling my upper limit problem again, I'll read it again. So that is my favorite book to recommend. And then I also like to recommend The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, because that is such a life-changing book. I just listened to the audiobook again recently. So that's another one that I love that is so inspiring. So those are the two that I like to recommend.
And I'll cite to those in the show notes. I'm having trouble writing them down, right? Because all I can find is a crayon. You ever have that where you're looking for a pen and your kids...
I do have that, and I sometimes what will happen is I'll be searching like the whole house, and there will not be like one pen that works in the entire house, and then I will like in a tirade, like in a state of rage, like go to Staples and buy like an absurd amount of pens. Like this is unacceptable.
It's amazing. But Rachel, thank you so much for joining me. Do you have any final ideas you'd like to leave with the audience before we close, and where can folks find you online?
Yeah. Well, in terms of final ideas, I would just say that we all limit our choices. Like we all think that, oh, I have to do this or I have to do that. You don't have to do a lot of the things that you think you have to do. So I would just revisit the choices that you make every day and realize that you have a lot more choices than you think you do to make the life that you want for yourself. So those are my parting words. And if you wanted to find me, you could find me at RodgersCollective.com. And I'm also on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook at Rach Rodgers, ESQ.
And you've been listening to Rachel Rodgers, business lawyer turned business coach, intellectual property strategist, and owner of the Rodgers Collective, which is committed to helping entrepreneurs protect and profit from their valuable content. Rachel, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It was awesome.
And that concludes episode 52 of the podcast. Thanks so much to all of you for listening. If you like what we do here, we'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment and head over to iTunes and give it a review. It helps others know what they can expect from the show and helps us out tremendously. Thanks again to all of you for listening, and I will see you back here next week. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the Washing Tech Policy Podcast. You've been briefed.